A lot of games come across as pretty straightforward. There's a defined storyline, a sequence of events, and so forth. Some games, however, require a bit of nuance to understand, as some are more about interpretation of art and the meaning, rather than what's directly presented to you. What's going on, everyone? This is Invader, and welcome to my review for Genesis Noir on Xbox Series X. I acquired this game through Xbox Game Pass, but you can also purchase it for a bit over 15 bucks Canadian. It's also available for the PC. The game is developed by Feral Cat Den and published by Fellow Traveler. I've always been a fan of noir films. There's just a certain charm to them that I enjoy. So naturally, when I first saw Genesis Noir, I was intrigued, and it was all the more tempting since it was day one in Xbox Game Pass. So grab a fedora and gather around for my take on Genesis Noir. The story is presented as a classic detective narrative with allegories to the universe's creation, blending cinematic film noir with aspects of the theory behind the Big Bang. You play as No Man, a character who represents time. He's a wreck as he's trying to get over his old love, Miss Mass, who is the representation of the mass of the universe. She's a nightclub singer, and one night she gets into some major trouble. Golden Boy, who's the physical representation of energy, is a saxophone player in her band. He storms into her apartment and fires a gunshot at her. Hearing her cries for help, No Man rushes to her aid, only to discover a paused scene stretched across the room. No Man then finds out that he can pause time itself. Upon finding a shell casing with a swirl mark on it, he soon realizes he can create a black hole to interrupt this scene. No Man then sets out on a mission to recover more of these spiral marks in an attempt to save his love. The gameplay is a mix of action, puzzler, and point and click. At times, you'll be wandering around sections of the game looking for items and clues that will help you piece together what's going on. Other times, there will be puzzles that prompt you to either do simple motions or perform more complex actions. The puzzles themselves range in their level of challenge, some being simple, and others more of a chore to complete. I can't really say I enjoyed them all, but they didn't necessarily hinder my overall experience either. For the most part, they were just obstacles to progress through, which is a shame because there's a lot that you could do with this game concept. Otherwise, Genesis Noir makes you continually curious as to what awaits you in the next sections. Each section is presented in unique ways that genuinely make you excited to continue on. While there are simple premises, it doesn't get dull or dragged out. My playthrough is a mostly smooth experience, however, I do need to mention that I did encounter some bugs. During certain sections, I got stuck in the scenery and needed to restart my game. Another time, I literally fell through the floor in a hidden area and couldn't get back up to where I needed to be. That didn't happen often, but still, that needs to be patched. The visual styles for this game were mainly inspired by the works of Italo Calvino, an Italian writer of short stories whose Cosmic Comics collection would serve as the visual basis for this game, taking scientific facts and turning them into imaginative scenes and stories. Coincidentally, he also helped to publish an old relative of mine, who went on to become a well-known Italian novelist. The game combines a film noir theme and color palette with neorealism art stylings to create a unique game adaptation, and I've got to say that it looks very good. It's simple in a lot of ways, but it creates a very eye-catching backdrop to the story. The soundtrack is very much a part of this title. As stated earlier, this game takes a lot of inspiration from film noirs. In a lot of ways, typical film noirs are defined by their tone, and this one certainly hits the mark. The game uses a striking dark color scheme, and that's reflected in the soundtrack. It can be dark, play with sexual themes, and reflect danger. The soundtrack for Genesis Noir does this very well. You'll find memorable tracks with saxophones, trumpets, piano, and clarinets used in tandem, or the occasional saxophone solo for a moodier tone. The soundtrack was composed by Skillbard, who does sound design for a variety of studios and outlets. Overall, the soundtrack is quite well done and mixes effortlessly into the story. However, my one nitpick would be that I would have liked to have seen it featured a bit more during the puzzle sections. There are some subtle themes present, but even something with a slow vocal solo would have been nice. Nonetheless, the music in this title is very much on point. My playthrough of Genesis Noir took me about 5.5 hours to complete. A good portion of that was because I got stuck on some of the more challenging puzzles. Depending on how well versed you are at puzzle games, you could progress much sooner or possibly even later. This isn't a large title by any means, and you could probably beat it in one dedicated night of playing if you really wanted to. However, with that being said, don't let the playtime fool you. It's a shorter title worth investing your time into. Now it's that time where I go over the good and the bad aspects of Genesis Noir, and then give you my final verdict on it. Starting off with the good. It has an interesting story with a classic detective noir film overtone combined with the telling of how the Big Bang started. It's a very unique take on things to say the least. The art style itself is very striking, taking neorealism stylings and combining it with noir dark tones for an impactful look to the game. As well, the soundtrack is very strong, it melds well with how the story is put together. The use of saxophones, piano, and other instruments make for a compelling, moody soundtrack. It brings out emotions where there are no words spoken. Next, and onto the bad aspects of the game, there are some notable bugs. Again, I'm not saying this game is littered with them, but from my experiences, there are a few things that need to be patched up. The story can be a bit convoluted at times, and while it does do a good job at conveying themes, there are at times, and this is specifically towards the end, points where things can be a bit confusing. As well, the puzzles can be either too easy or too challenging. It's a bit of two extremes. Some may be a bit put off by a few of the puzzles because of the trial and error, which is a shame because the gameplay revolves so much around them. Genesis Noir is a unique take on storytelling, using the film noir theme to tell the story of the Big Bang. It uses neorealism art styling to create a compelling tone of a noir movie. You can feel genuinely invested trying to figure out what's going on, like an old school classic detective flick. The soundtrack is very much a strong point, bringing out the atmosphere that goes hand in hand with the noir film aesthetics. The melodies between saxophone, piano, and clarinets never gets old. However, it does show its weaknesses when it comes to some of its puzzles. And at times, you can be left scratching your head with where the narrative's going, because there is interpretation involved. However, for the most part, this game is worth investing your time in. It's a nice little indie title that will make you think a little deeper, but will keep things a bit more interesting along the way. Overall, I give Genesis Noir a 7.5 out of 10. So what do you guys think of Genesis Noir? Is this a game that you plan on checking out? Or is this a pass? Also, what did you think of my review? As always, thank you for taking the time to check out my video review. Until next time everyone, Invader, out.